So, today I'm going to do a Spirituality 101. I wasn't quite sure which playlist to put this one in, to be honest with you, because it kind of does bridge the gap a little bit between this and the dark side of spirituality. But I'm going to go for Spirituality 101 because I suppose it's more of a warning and something to be aware of. So, today we're going to be talking about what I call spiritual psychosis. And basically what this means is it's people who are, or class themselves as spiritual, who refuse to see outside of a very certain mindset. The problem with spirituality is that people have turned it almost into a religion. And as you know, you've got things like Christian-based belief systems that kind of run through that, and with that we then get into this "I'm right, you're wrong" kind of attitude. Now, the problem, cat getting in my camera case. The problem is that there's too many people in the spiritual community who dedicate so much of their life to other people's teachings. Now, I'm not against people doing research, and I'm not against people working with the works of other people. The problem that I have is that people take this work as canon law, and it's wrong. Spirituality in essence is about being a free-thinking individual. Now, the problem is that when you meet these people, this is when you get attitudes of, you'll know when you get there, and when you see this, that and the other. Now, I've always said, I'm not on the same path as you, so I won't see when I get there, because I'm not going to the same destination. We're all individuals. Yes, we are all from source energy, but we are individual light codes or vibrations. We have our own roles. Some of us are older souls, some of us are from further back divine energy, which I'm going to do some content on to try and explain in visual terms what I mean by that. So I've had situations whereby people absolutely refuse to see things in a different way. Case in point, everybody knows that I'm kind of against the Egyptian stuff because of my experience. I have to go from my experience and what I've kind of picked up and learnt along the way from my own research, my own teachings, and again, more my own experience. Now, spiritual psychosis with these people is a flat-out refusal to accept that something could be different. Now, don't get me wrong, I believe what I believe. I'm quite firm in what I believe, and there's very few people that can sway my mind on that. However, as always, I'm not saying that I'm right because I can't prove it. Recently, yet again, I've had situations whereby people feel it's necessary to send me content or to comment on stuff, and basically tell me to go about things a different way. It's my life. I'm going to live it how I want to, because again, I'm a free-thinking individual. Now, the problem is with spiritual psychosis is that people stick to a very strict doctrine, and even if people don't preach the word of love and light, this whole concept of just let it go, stay quiet, don't say anything, keep moving forwards. I get it, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, that for me is what's caused the corruption. Recently I had somebody sent me a video about starving issue, don't feed into it, and again, I kind of get that, but at the same time, if people aren't going to be talking about the issues within spirituality, within the witchcraft community, etc., then for me just to kind of starve it and not say anything, I'm feeding into that. For me, people And again, this needs to go into extra, a different kind of form of content when I'm talking about layers of source, if you want to call it that. People get to the veil of the light side, and they don't seem to realise that there's far more beyond that. And they're being held at this certain level because they refuse to believe that there is anything beyond that, so it's a tough one. I suppose what I would say to people is, don't become set in your ways. Don't feel like because somebody like myself says something that you might disagree with, that you have to agree with me. But don't be so naive and set in your ways to think that there couldn't be something in it. And this is the issue that we have, because the problem is once the spiritual psychosis kicks in, people then refuse to bend. They refuse to see things from a different perspective, and they refuse to admit that they could be wrong. That's when the ego starts kicking in. That's when the defences start going up, and people would then rather kind of cut the nose off to spite the face, or they go on the attack. Like I say, for me, being a spiritualist, there's nothing more insulting than somebody sending you content that is clearly not what you preach, clearly not what you believe, in some kind of pathetic attempt to try and get you to change your mind. Like I say, for me, we're all free thinking individuals, and just because I disagree with somebody and I have a different belief system, I'm allowed to have my opinion on that. Of course I am, but I'm not trolling people. I'm not sending them my content, look at this, watch this, you know what I mean? It's just unfair. And people miss out on really good opportunities, people miss out on really good situations because they refuse to believe that something could be different. Now, tying into this, one of the reasons why we've had such stagnation and corruption and greed, spilling into spirituality, is because of this spiritual psychosis. It's pack mentality. What you got to remember is people who are drawn to spirituality, they tend to be broken. You know what I mean? I was when I started, be it that they're a client or somebody who wants to work in the industry. And too many of them turn to gurus and teachers and stuff like that. And nobody questions where this information and knowledge is coming from. Nobody questions if there could be a different way of doing it. So we end up with this spiritual society of people who are all kind of, well, this is the way it is. This is what such and such said. And we've become stagnant and dormant, and nobody's actually questioning, well, what's beyond that? Why do we believe that? Why do I believe that? You know what I mean? And then, we end up with a society much like the greater collective, where you've got people who can't think for themselves. They're just rabbiting and repeating the works of others and the knowledge of others. Like I say, when I do content, normally something pops into my head when I'm on the dog walk or I'm making a cup of tea, and I go, oh, that's good. And I kind of mull it over in my mind. I very rarely do any research, and I completely understand that goes against the grain of everything that you've ever been taught. But again, everything that you are taught is to not be a free thinker. It is about researching what everybody else says and does, and their opinions and their thought processes, and kind of going along with that. You're not actually encouraged to develop your own thoughts and theories. I mean, if you think about the education system, when you go to university, a bachelor's degree is all about learning other people's theories. You then go on to a master's, and that's about putting together a hypothesis of your own based on other people's work. And then when you get to PhD level, that's about testing your hypothesis, but it's all structured around other people's work. You know what I mean? Why can't you just have your own ideas? Why can't you just come up with this stuff? It seems insane to me, but this is what goes off, and again, this is what we've got in spirituality, because we don't have any free thinkers. the spiritual psychosis kicks in. People refuse to see things from a different perspective. The walls go up. You know, they then band together with their kind of clique, with their collective, if you want to call it that, of people who think the same. And then they go marching on for what they want and what they believe in kind of like almost army fashion. And it's wrong. You know, you take the new wave, the idea of that is that it's a group of free thinking individuals. We've all got our own beliefs. The long-term goal is greater change for the collective. You know, we've all got very different views on things, and that's the way it should be. You know, we're a bit mercenary, if you want to call it that. So yeah, just be mindful not to kind of fall into that spiritual psychosis. You know, I'm very aware, don't get me wrong, it's not kind of past my attention that obviously with what I talk about in development groups and stuff like that I've got to be careful that people don't kind of latch onto every word I say and take it as gospel, because it's not supposed to be about that. It's about saying, this is my opinion, this is what I believe, and it does change. You know, it's called a journey or a path for a reason. You know, you going on an adventure, you change your mind, you find different bits that you like, you swap and change and stuff like that. You know, don't take what people say as gospel, because they, you know, at the end of the day, they don't know, they can't prove it, it's just what they believe. So there you go, spiritual psychosis. It does go on a lot, I'm afraid. You know, I've missed out on good opportunities and relationships and stuff like that because of people's spiritual psychosis. I get I'm a little bit militant and a little bit forceful with my views, but you know what I mean. It's, you know, I believe what I believe. You know, I'm sorry if it offends people, but you know, I've got to preach what I need to preach. I'm not saying that I'm right. It's just what I believe. So there you go. Ta-ta.